Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Every Day is a Story on its own podcast, which is part of the Into the Outer Realms family. I am your host, creative and storyteller, Joey Medea. I know what you're going to say because I'm going to say I'm really excited, and you're going to say Joey's always excited. That's his default position. But I have to tell you, I'm really 22 years. I have known our guest tonight, and we are of a piece of a cloth. So much of our audience is Gen X, so we talk the same language anyway. Nick is really cool. He's amazing illustrator. You're going to see we've done collaborated together in many different ways. I've written book reviews of his collection of short stories, his amazing novel More Argonauts, which is a collection of reimagined Greek myths. Nick is a deep thinker, um, embraces technology, which I still kind of struggle with, and incorporates it into his work so well. With my paranormal stuff, it gets a little bit sci-fi, but Nick's work is really good. Subjects, Dead Objects with No Function. I have a block about this title. Dead Objects with No Function is a collection of short stories. One of the short stories that I absolutely love is on the New Mystics website. I have to show you guys this. This is his graphic strip monumental about these two moai on Easter Island that encounter all these things. They can't move, they can't change their expression. I'm going to show you. I have a little bit of a slideshow. I'm just, you can tell I'm excited. And hey, my brother's in the audience. Hey, Chris, hope you had a terrific birthday. My brother turned double nickels. So I tested that out for him about 18 months ago, and it was pretty good. So he decided to give it a try. Welcome to everybody else. Charles, hi. Nice to see you. Everybody else who's in the audience. I'm going to run our 11-second opening with music by Knight Berman Jr., another collaborator and future guest. I don't have a formal bio for Nick. That's not the way he rolls, which is really kind of excellent. This whole episode is going to be his bio, and I know you're going to be impressed. So let's hit this opening real quick, and then I'm just going to bring him on, and we're going to dive in like less than 3 minutes into the show, which is amazing. And there it is. Quick, simple, and to the point. From the musical How All This Bullying Began, one of the social justice pieces that Knight Berman Jr. and I did. So listen, without further ado, because I could ramble on forever, I'm going to let the man talk himself. Everybody, the world, the audience, please meet Nick Pendleton.
Hey, Joey, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, do you prefer Nicholas? Do you prefer Nick?
Nick is great. Yeah, my
Okay,
mom
Nick.
called me Nicholas under certain circumstances, and it's my professional name, but you can call me Nick. Yeah.
All right, very good. So 22. So
Yeah, I was like, that doesn't compute because I'm 25. I mean, at least,
there you go.
I mean, I didn't mature much past 25, I guess.
You went gray very early.
True that.
So now we know that, and you were super, super articulate for a 3-year-old, which you probably actually were. So guys, my book, Minor Confessions of an Angel Falling Upward. This book has had a really interesting pedigree. It's sort of a post modern thing. People who get it love it. People who don't get it reject it and absolutely hate and despise it.
No, I
But
loved it.
but Nick did this guy, and it was originally done serial. I like to create a lot of work serialized because it keeps you honest, and it's small bites, and that whole idea, if you write X amount a day, then suddenly you have this. An interesting thing, Nick, if you were to write what was it, 100 words a day, you would have a pretty good sized novel every single year. Just write like 100 words a day.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. So there's a certain writer, his initials are NG, that we're kind of not supposed to talk about anymore. But he'd say, how do you write? You just sit down in front of a typewriter and you do it. A word, a paragraph, a sentence. But anyhow, this was on something called Legion Studios.
Right.
And
Christian
I guess it was
Dumais and
every month.
Derek Caraview.
Yeah. Who I'm still in contact with. And I know you are too.
Yeah.
You may know Christian folks because he did the Drunk Hulk Twitter, which
Exactly.
totally blew up like 10 years ago.
Yeah, I was crazy.
Yeah. It was very cool. Is that still on Twitter? Do you know?
I know he still does it under the Hulk banner. I know he
Yeah.
still posts every once in a while for that. He's got a few different social media handles. I think he's mostly on Blue Sky now, though. I don't know if I wouldn't believe he's still on X.
Oh, right. Okay, there you go. So I'm on Blue Sky. Nick's on Blue Sky. Come on over
Mm-hmm.
to Blue Sky. I'm Joey Medea. That's simple.
Yeah.
I think
NF
that's your name.
Pendleton.
NF Pendleton. There you
Mm-hmm.
go. So come on over to Blue Sky and join us because we're having fun there. I'm posting my blog stuff. You're putting stuff up all the time. So anyway, I get this letter and or email, and it says I've done these illustrations. I have this thing here that I'm going to show you guys, so I might as well do it right now. He did amazing illustrations. There's a ton of them, and I'm sad to say I've misplaced them. I only found this two, but check this out. This
You
was
have more than
so
I
cool.
have.
I have to find them. There's no way I would have gotten rid of them. They're in some folder, probably with a lot of your work that's labeled something stupid because sometimes I can be like that. So the past 22 years, Nick, when we got really, really serious with New Mystics. He did the logo, which I know a lot of you know. It's the imprint for my novels, for my social media company. I don't know what this dumb slide thing is here, right here, but that's the New Mystics logo, which is amazing. It's got a Celtic feel. It's amazing. I wear my t-shirt proudly, so I'm wearing my Monumental t-shirt. Speaking of Monumental, so guys, newmystics.com. I want to get this all out of the way so I can give Nick
Go
the
for it.
stage. Nick did this amazing thing. And Nick, the other thing that I have, and it's put away because we're moving in a couple of months, I have the original place, but check this out, guys. Terrific artist. You're going to see more of Nick's work as well. You can see it up in the left-hand corner there. These two these two dudes who have this. So it's a little bit Gary Trudeau, it's a little bit Far Side, it's a little bit Bloomsbury. What was your inspiration, Nick, for Monumental?
Oh, I would probably say it was healthy doses of those because I was obsessed with comic strips as a kid and as like a middle schooler, just because they were a whole page in the newspaper.
Yeah.
And I had artistic aspirations as a kid, but I didn't really know, how you could express it in the real world. And that was a direct line. It was something you could look at every day. And so I bought collections of Burke Brethard work, again, Gary Trudeau. Um, and then, of course, there's probably like a healthy dose of an influence of Monty Python in there as well.
Yeah.
I always imagine them having English accents for some reason.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, one is the more stoic, staid, the more proper one, and the other one is the more ludicrous one. Of course, that's how you have a comedic pair. So,
Yeah.
and it's the
Oh,
same. Yeah, and it was the same black and white ink drawing, and I just went wild with it. I thought, what if it was again just an experiment, and I'm like, because I think always the writing is the funnest part. Like I've always enjoyed the writing more than any other part. Like I like to draw, I love to record, I love all kinds of different things like that. But uh, those always feel like more of a chore. No matter how much you're enjoying it, it's
Yeah.
always more of a chore aspect to it. But the writing never really felt like a chore. It always felt like very natural, and it always was probably my favorite part of any project that I've done.
And does that hold true today? Because I know, like, I love the research, and we're going to talk about research,
Mm-hmm.
and I love the outlining. The first draft I like; it's super experimental and all. The second draft is when I really begin to
Exactly.
judge. And the polished draft is every time I let go of a sentence, knowing I'm not going to revisit this again until it's already printed, and then it's too damn late.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you enjoy every aspect of the part? Where do you get hung up as a writer, if anywhere?
Well, yeah. I would say first draft. It's very experimental. It starts with the initial ideas, and I usually have a first draft that's very short. I jokingly say there's a lot of, and then something happens here, and then something happens here, and then you have very boring transitions, very unimaginative things, because you're trying to get like big ideas, big character. Like in the novel, I tried to get like set pieces and things like that down. So I come out with a very spare, a very thin first draft, and I go, oh no, this is bad. Because my question is going to be, actually, I was going to ask you if your second draft is like mine. My second draft doubles or triples in size rather than gets, because third draft is where I start, hacking away with the machete and getting rid of things.
Yeah.
But that second draft is beautiful. It's my favorite part of the writing process.
That's cool. Yeah, it's weird for me, and it's getting much more fluid. And I've had some guests on the show, writers who are they're older guys. They did other things. Then they really concentrated on writing. They're very good at what they do. One of the guys, Mike Cobb, reminds me of Caleb Carr. Like his
Oh yeah.
historical fiction is like on the
Mm-hmm.
level of like Alienist, and I don't say that lightly. And Mike knows that. But they're very intuitive and like no outline and all. I come from playwriting and I come from screenwriting,
Mm-hmm.
where I do an outline and the outline sort of becomes a treatment, and that treatment is kind of what you're talking about for the first draft.
Right.
So my first draft is really like 1.5.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Um, yeah, I love that, and I was surprised. I guess my novel writing has kind of changed. It would be like get it all out, and it's all these words, and then I'll chop it down. And drafts 2 and 3 were so painful, and I would beat myself up. Like, I would sit there and go, "You rushed the first draft, and this is a piece of crap, and now we have to sit here for the next 2 hours and fix a paragraph because it sucks." And the torment was so intense that I'm spending a lot more time on that, like, draft 1.5, and that I do love because, you know, outlining and all of that is really sort of gotten, we're such a reactionary society, right? We're seeing it politically. I've just realized our problem is we react as a society
Mm-hmm.
instead of act. So it's like, oh, don't do the 3-act model. That's like hampers you, and don't do the hero's journey because it's sexist and it's blah, blah, blah. But it really kind of works, and it gives me a frame
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
work in, which actually gives me much more freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I always like to play with formalism, things like that. So at the beginning, it's really just, oh, I'm getting this idea, this idea, this idea, this character, this character. So you're doing broad strokes. It's big sweeps of the paintbrush. You write a scene, you write an idea about a character. Oh, well, this happened, and then this. It's not like, is this going in the book? Is this not? And then you've got this. You finally have this loose amalgam of things, and you're like, can I shape this into a story?
Yeah.
Can I do it? And that's the decision point where you decide whether that's going to be your first draft. At least, and this is just for me, but this is where I decide whether it's going to be my first draft or not, or if I gotta abandon it and run back to writing a short story. Because you were talking about doing small bites.
Yeah.
You remember small, More Argonauts is written in very um, episodically. It's very short, and that was the kind of challenge I set for myself. Not really a challenge; it was to make sure that I was making progress on the book so that I could see progress every day, so that I could see it coming together. Also, keeping it modular so I can switch things around. Like, does this
Mhm.
work better here, or does this change the meaning of that by putting it here against this thing instead?
Yeah.
You have, it allows you to build a larger narrative. And again, I personally think that it reads pretty well as a novel.
Oh,
It
yeah.
works as a novel. It flows, even though it's very episodic. I think there's one section of the book that's like 20 pages long,
Mhm.
and it's kind of like a short story within the novel, but it's actually part of the novel.
Yeah.
I think it's the most important part of the novel, and it's one of the last things I wrote for the novel. Um, but everything else is, 1, 2, 5, maybe 10 pages.
Yeah.
But then, pretty soon you got 300, 400 pages sitting in front of you. And you're like, what can, so then it just became arranging it. And then and then you think, okay, well, and especially since I'm writing about something set in an ancient world, I don't have a baseline knowledge of that. I never studied ancient Greece in college. I didn't, I don't know anything more than anybody who loves Greek mythology knows. Um, but I'm like, okay, one of the best ways to I think, to make a really engaging fantasy or fiction is to ground it into something very real and give it some very tactile and tangible things. So that's when I burrowed in. I said, I should really start doing some research. I really need to find out where this is happening, what the places are like. So I'm studying photographs, I'm reading articles, and, doing all these things. And that's when the algorithm kicks in, and it's like, oh, you like historical information about ancient Greece? And then it just starts feeding you things. And it feeds you things that you never even knew existed. And because of that, I have elements in this book that I would have never imagined on my own. But my algorithm picked up on what I was interested in, and it started feeding me more articles and more, more material about, did you know this about ancient Greece? Did you know about this? Did you know this in ancient Turkey? And it's like, no, I didn't know that. That's absolutely fascinating. And I'm going to pluck that, and I'm going to exaggerate the hell out of it, and I'm going to put it in my book, and I'm going to, repurpose it, and I'm going to, kind of mold it around what I'm working on. And it is like revelatory. Research, I know some people probably just groan when they, hear the word, but it is, again, it is part of the creative process. The more you can ground your fiction in a real world, and give it texture, like you add these little details, and it comes alive for me. Like that's
Yeah.
what because I see the fiction. I like, again, like I said, writing is my favorite part, but I always see it play out filmically in my head.
Yeah.
And I try to not write too much like that, because then you can get very literal, and then you're just describing what's happening. And it's like, no, a novel is different than a film. You have different liberties and different things you can do with a novel. So let's pare back some of that filmic stuff. Let's keep it very dynamic, keep it interesting, put all that texture in, but then let's kind of get back to the more literary, telling of the story.
So we've probably teased the audience enough. So it's called More Argonauts, Another Argonautica. So pitch to the audience, potential readers.
Yeah.
What's this book about?
So if you've ever seen the 1960s, I think 63 film Jason and the Argonauts, with the Dynamation stop motion, that was in this novel is something that happened in the past. And those men, and in my novel, one woman, who embarked on that voyage are considered probably the greatest heroes in the world. And this is about the next generation who lives in their shadow. More specifically, it's about three of the illegitimate children of Hercules. It kind of picks up after Hercules' 12 labors, and then it goes, what happened to Hercules after the 12 labors? And that's where the story picks up. And then we meet these three random illegitimate children of his, and then it just kind of goes from there. And their stories all start to intersect. And, and then, so, and the ancients did write all those stories about Hercules after the 12 labors, but that's mostly what everybody knows. The stories afterwards are very bizarre in comparison, and we're talking about like he's gathering a hellhound, and the stories after it are even more bizarre. And so that was my jumping off point. for it. It was like, this is absolutely fascinating. And I thought it kind of spoke to kind of a cultural thing that we're kind of going through now about identity, about gender fluidity, things like that. And it's like, yeah, I think that that is definitely something. And also, us being in middle age, how that affects us.
Yeah.
How, we looked at the previous generation, rolled our eyes, when they got old fogies, and then it happened to us. And it's like, no one understands what we're going through. Like, middle age is a biological and mental change that men are woefully, especially men, because men don't talk about these things, woefully underprepared for. And
Right.
so, what if you put like the greatest, public domain superhero who ever existed on the planet Earth, and you put him through middle age and an identity crisis?
Yeah.
And that was the jumping off point. And then to see what happens to the next generation.
Which I especially loved. For reasons I've talked about publicly and not, I'm very interested in this idea of the legacy of the children. I'm a junior, so that comes
Yeah.
with a certain thing. Oldest child, male, overachiever, kind of nutty.
Yeah. Join the club.
But this idea of what is our responsibility to the legacy, what do we then drift back to our kids, like at what point is our job done? I really kind of struggled with that. I was a dad where it's like, okay, I have 17-18 years to teach you everything I can possibly teach you, to let you go only so far without like really hurting yourself and doing
Yeah.
damage. I'm going to try to model, but when it's time for you to go, it's time for you to go. And I want to see our relationship change. I want to
Yeah.
see the dynamic change. And this is interesting because these are three kids who have not met dad and have
Right.
all these expectations and all this pressure on them.
Yeah. And they have
It,
three different sets of expectations. Like they have
yeah,
three different ways of looking at it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. One, is like in the hero worship. She only knows him through the stories. So she's like obsessed with meeting him. And because she's basically, his clone, like she's like him in so many ways. And then there's the son who rejects the father. He's a bad guy. And he did his mom wrong, and he doesn't want anything to do with him. And then there's the third son who's just he's so he's so different than the rest. Like he's a true outsider. And he takes a completely different path that you wouldn't even think that somebody like him would be the son of the strongest and mightiest hero on earth. He takes
yeah,
a completely different tack. Because if you want to think of like the soldier archetype or the hero archetype, he's the magician. Literally, he's the magician archetype. And so that's a completely different journey
yeah.
with completely different destinations and completely different points of view.
And
But they
and
all
and
have traits of them too. And like
yeah,
us, we all have traits of our fathers and mothers. So we're repeating cycles. We sometimes know and we sometimes don't know we're doing it. And we're also at the same time rejecting things, going our own direction, trying to
yeah.
make our own way. And we also create fictions about our upbringing.
Hmm. Yeah, I see that. I see that rampant in the younger generations. Like I'm really sorry. I have two sons that are engaged now. My daughter's 25 and but also disabled and just formally diagnosed with autism. A lot of her medical problems go back to my father's and my father-in-law's
Mm.
exposure to Agent Orange. It's like a lot to process. Like if I knew this, would I had my daughter? And now my son's being engaged, so the family has expanded
Right.
and they're living with women who have profound effects on them and their personality. And I keep, saying to my sons, like, it's really interesting where I find myself going, want to have an opinion about that? Nope. You just got to let it unfold and you got to kind
Mm-hmm.
of change it. So I'm in this really weird place now where, yes, these weddings are going to come up and we're going to meet the in-laws, which is imminent, and what are they gonna what do they know about me, the kooky writer artist guy. But anyway, so that's more Argonauts.
Right.
Guys, get this, my review.
I had a blast writing it. It's the funnest writing project I've ever done, and it was a revelation because it was the first novel I ever finished. I've been
Oh,
trying to
okay.
write a novel since before you and I met, and I could just never make it happen for whatever reason. There was always some kind of
Wow.
block, and it's
Yeah.
always a mental block, but some kind of block kept me from doing it until this finally clicked.
Because there's that, when I first met you, you were doing that project that I absolutely adore, and I couldn't find it
Yeah,
anywhere in the stuff, but with the false memories and the
yeah.
tattoos and that has stayed with me for 2 decades. Like, what's the status of that? Is it, like, completely abandoned, or?
Well, so I had the complete first draft written. Actually, I did it during, I think it may have been the first NaNoWriMo, the
Oh, okay.
first National Write a Novel Month.
Yeah.
I think it was the very first one. I took the challenge and I wrote 50,000 word novel in a month. And that was it. That was the first draft of it. And so I'm like, okay, well, maybe I can really do something with this. And then I spent the next 10 years dabbling with the second draft, and I got about halfway into a second draft. And so that's what I have. And I've kind of cannibalized it. A lot of my old novels that I had to abandon, I
Yeah.
cannibalize a lot of the ideas. Like those ideas, they're my ideas, but they're not going anywhere, so I might as well use them. Like, it's like I've got a limited probably number of ideas in my head for the rest of my life, so I might as well use up all the ones that I've come up with. And so, yeah, I mean, there were things from that book, things from the previous novel I tried to write that ended up in this novel that became a lot of these short stories in Dead Objects. Yeah, I would like, okay, well, I like that nugget, I like that idea, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to excise it and I'm going to make it into its own thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I've created this mega world called the Stanton Chronicles, where everything I read, everything I create, every nugget of an idea, I go, "Oh, that can weave into that." One more thing I want to say about more Argonauts, and then we'll move
sure.
on, because I want to really, my goal tonight is to not only talk shop, but to really give the audience a sense of just your breadth of talent and the work that you've generated. You interdict yourself, or there's a narrator, so I don't want to be presumptuous, but there's a narrator who kind of
Oh, there's
breaks
an
the
author,
fourth
yeah.
wall and says, "Tell me about that. At what point did that birth?"
Actually, you want to talk about fragments? I had written a fragment about um, a married with children father who was also a writer, an aspiring writer, whose muse shows up at his house in the middle of the night, and he's like, no, I can't do this, I can't party with you anymore, I'm a responsible adult. And she's just plants herself on the couch, starts smoking cigarettes, and then she starts dictating. And so he has no choice but to start writing. And that, again, it's a kind of a heavy-handed metaphor for what it's like to be a writer. You know how many nights you've laid yourself down to go to sleep, you've done your deep breathing, your relaxation, and then ping, and then you got to grab the notepad and you're sitting there, jotting sketches, because it will not be there in the morning. It just won't. It'll
Right.
be completely gone. So that was just like that little inspiration, and that's always been sitting around. And I was always, it always just kind of popped up. It would start popping up here and there, and I thought, you know what? I want to write this thing that's set in ancient Greece and Greek mythology. And, Homer always started his things, oh, muse, speak through me. So I'm like, okay, well, let's do an invocation. Let's make the story, originate with the muse. Well, what if, he's kind of a stodgy, kind of a schlubby loser, I kind of, semi autobiographical,
I
I
was
use,
waiting for that.
I use life experience to kind of for this kind of for this character. And then you have her, who's she's her own beast, and she comes back into his world, and she's like, sit down, strap in, get your pen, because we're gonna write a book tonight, and it goes smooth for a while, and then they start to part ways and butt heads about what should and shouldn't be there. Um, I thought it was a fun framing device. It was a fun way for me to interject like a modern voice, like just myself,
Yeah.
like because and I don't know if it's I don't know if it's arrogant or not, but I like to it's like I have little commentaries. I would I'd be writing and I would just mention something to myself, talking to myself like, well, that wouldn't work, or well, that's ridiculous. And it's like, well, I need to cut that. It's like, no, don't cut it. Leave it in the book and then comment on how ridiculous it is. And then it became, oh, it's like this is kind of this battle between, she and him about what goes in, how the story should unfold, how the characters are. And I thought it was just kind of a fun little framing device. And I tried not to get too wild with it. I
Yeah.
didn't want it to overpower the narrative. I didn't want it to, overstay its welcome. And I also didn't want to use it. So I didn't want to use it as a story crutch, like a Deus Ex Machina,
Right.
except for comedic effect. The only time that you pull that kind of stuff, because Deus Ex Machina is a big part of ancient Greek theater. I mean,
Yeah.
that's where Deus Ex Machina comes from. Is the gods intervene, and this happens. So it's a wink and a nod. These kinds of things, and it's if you don't get it, it doesn't affect the story. I don't think it affects the story. It's kind of like it's there for you if you get it, and so I'm trying to pepper all kinds of I was just peppering everything in there, like little bits and pieces. I have references to songs. I have references to
Yep.
conversations I've had with real people, and if they read it, they'll go, "Oh, wait a minute! I think that's me. I think I'm in there." It's like a conglomeration of a lifetime because it even has. So I'll tell you the first story. I just remembered this yesterday, Joey, thinking about us talking. The very first story I ever wrote in third grade was the first story I got to read in front of class that wasn't a classroom assignment or anything like that. And it made me fall in love with writing. The story was a 7-page handwritten epic. It started with the Earth exploding and a guy, rocketing away in a spaceship. But at the end of page 7, he wakes up from 1,000 years in cryogenic sleep. He finds a Pegasus and he rides it into a black hole. Well, Pegasus and a black hole actually make an appearance in this novel. It's like I just scooped hunks of, flotsam and jetsam from my entire life and threw it in there. And it's weird how little things pop up in the narrative. And that's, only I would know that. But it's, yeah, it just feels like it was it was something that I had to produce. I don't know if you've had a project like that where you just didn't like it was the muse. It was like the muse is saying, this is going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. And you're along for the ride. And
Yeah.
then you end up with this thing and you go, wow, this is way more strangely personal than I ever had intended or thought it would be.
Yeah.
Um, Originally the idea was, oh, I'm going to do like an Avengers parody with a bunch of, Greek superheroes and they're going to go on some epic adventure. And that's completely never happened. That never happened in the narrative. So,
Yeah.
and what I say for the best, because I was pretty happy with where it went. So,
That trust is a big thing. So you have all these devices. So there's the chorus, there's direct communication with the audience. There are all these things that are available to you that are inherent in the in the inherent in the form, right? The Greeks like
mm-hmm,
really kind of elevated storytelling, gave us that. Then they broke it down. Aristotle says, "Oh, by the way, there's a beginning, middle, and end, and you need a unity and all this." So they were studying it, but they gave us all these great devices that the Elizabethans took, and then they made their little changes and
mm-hmm,
said, "No, no, no, things don't just have to happen off stage; they can actually happen on stage sometimes if we want." But I also love, Alan Moore has interdicted himself in his stories. Stephen
mm-hmm.
King, I'm rereading The Dark Tower series now. I was compelled.
Yeah, I know our mutual friend Christian Dumais has just completed a reread of it, and yeah, he's been doing commentary on his.
Oh, neat.
in his newsletter. So yeah,
Oh,
that's a pretty big undertaking to go back and revisit that. I'm stuck at Wolves of Kala,
oh,
so I
okay.
haven't gotten all the way through it once yet. So
Yeah. I just finished my third of the Gunslinger. I'm reading the second one, the drawing of the three for the second time. But what happened was one of my mentors, who's sort of a hermit in Mexico and was trained in the I Ching and Toltec wisdom and is creating all this amazing work in his later years. His lineages are amazing. He really kind of fell in love with AI and it just really struck me. I was having a really weird night. There was a lot of strange stuff going on, like Mars and I think Saturn were just like battling in the heavens, and
mm-hmm.
everybody was kind of like really
Yeah, well,
tense. It was a
it's
weird
been a
night, and
it's been a crazy spring, like late
yeah,
winter, early spring, astronomically. Yeah, a lot of
yeah,
stuff going on.
yeah. And so so he asked me my opinion on it, and here's like a mentor, and I don't want to go like I really am suspect of this, and the audience knows from the different brands of this podcast what my position is. But I was laying there, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. It had been a really, really tough night, and I went, I am child Roland, you know, at the Dark Tower. And that's what I wrote to
Yeah,
him. And I'm like, he's gonna think I'm crazy. And he wrote back and he's like, I totally get you. And then, a producer I'm working with out on the coast, he was like, how are things going for you? And I'm like, I'm Child Rollin to the Dark Tower Cave. And it just seems very resonant for me right now as a metaphor. Like, I'll tell you, up until very recently, up until about the last year, for about a decade, Pink Floyd's The Wall was just, I was like, this is the perfect soundtrack for
mm-hmm.
America and where we are. But now to me, with all the AI coming in and all this stuff and copyright thing, all these really strange and older creatives going, look, man, nothing's original. It can do it faster, better, because they're ready to kick off, retire, and die.
Sure.
Like I feel like I got a good 20, 25 years still left of me and a lot of stuff to do. Um, Rush's 2012. I'm
Mm.
like, the priests of C ranks are like these Silicon Valley bully boys.
Yeah.
It's the algorithms don't care for that, folks. I kid Nick about this, but my review of More Argonauts on Amazon was what got my 400, and that was the straw that broke the
Oh
camel's
no.
back.
See, I'm always killing things like that. It's you wouldn't believe. I'm like a yeah. I'm so sorry. I didn't know that.
No, I had mentioned it to you in passing. No, it was like they just, first of all, my reviews are long and considered, and they really screw up their algorithms because the AI doesn't know what the hell to do with it. And
Mm-hmm.
you can't talk about books that have sex and violence and drugs and dystopia and all these different things without talking about those things.
Mm-hmm.
So Amazon basically says, and if we start to get pinched down, our feed will know why. But so I was talking about all that stuff, but I did, and I should have taken it out. I said something in the review about the Silicon Valley bully boys, and they don't like to be called that in
Really?
their own house.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
there's a line in there where I say something about, oh, myths and what are our new myths, and Jung said there aren't any new myths, but AI is kind of like becoming our myth. But anyway, the hour is going so incredibly fast. So let's talk about
Okay.
dead objects with no function, because you have some stories that are like 20, 25 pages, but you have other stories that are like a page and a half. So
Yeah.
what was the process, the journey on this?
Yeah, it's kind of strange seeing it all. And when I finally when I started to compile it, it's strange. You see a lot of these stories out of their original context. Some of them, were due to constraints. I participated in a flash fiction anthology that you helped read my stories actually for that, where I had to produce 10 stories that I think were like 1,000 words or fewer. So I had written original things for that, but then I took some older stuff and pared it down. And for this, I added stuff back, and then I kind of edited in I didn't edit for ideas or content, but if I got new ideas that I wanted to put in, I kind of did a little George Lucasing on some of them. I added some stuff. So anyway, you have a lot of these stories that either aren't titled or they're very short. It's like next to longer form stories. A lot of it just happened to be what was the market that I was looking to put them in requiring. Some places let you send long form stories. Some places had, strict word limitations. And at the time that I was writing, you were writing for publication because you were trying to get that the way that you were getting known as an author, especially like in the late '90s, early 2000s, was still literary journals,
Mm-hmm.
paper, bound, printed paper, literary journals that you could buy at Barnes and Noble, like on the magazine rack, actually, or order through the mail. And websites were just like different IPs were getting their own websites. And like say, the one specifically that I remember was the Sci-Fi Channel.
Mm-hmm.
They had a website, of course, because everybody had a website all of a sudden. And publishing online was solved all the problems of the cost of print and everything like that. So, and sci-fi was in a particular space where, yeah, well, people love science fiction literature. There's a lot of science fiction journals and magazines out there. We will become the next great science fiction magazine, online magazine,
Yeah.
and we'll publish. And they offered pretty good, payouts for things, and they allowed longer form stuff. So I was writing stories to send to them, you know. I was writing stories to send to things that are a little bit more off kilter, sending them to small journals. I was writing for certain websites that said you just can't, like, they had philosophies that you just can't write much longer than this number of words, or else you're going to lose the audience. They'll only scroll so much because we were still on desktop computers. We didn't have iPhones yet. So, and there was all of this philosophy about, well, how are we going to do all this online stuff, and what is everybody's tolerance levels and stuff like that. So a lot of that writing was for some of those limitations. Um, and I think a lot of it is just it's kind of hard to encapsulate it because it's over such a long period of time. It is 25 years of work. And I had published it, like I said, here and there, and I had even combined some of them into book form over the years a couple of different times in different ways. And I think this was just kind of my swan song for all of that stuff. It's like I'm going to take everything that I've done to this point and put it all between two covers. I'm going to publish it, and this is going to be the final word. And if everybody wants to know anything about, well, what's your writing like, I'll just point to that link, and you can go buy a copy of it if you want to, and you can find out. It was just that simple. It was just like, this stuff is going to get lost. Like, with some of the artwork that you have that I did back then, I do not have it anymore. It's been lost to me. And I was afraid I was going to lose all of this. And this was the way to solve that problem was just to put them between two covers and then to, put them in one place. And, everybody has an opinion about Amazon. I definitely have my opinions about Amazon, but it is a universal place to get things. And it is a quick and easy, resource. It's also a resource for people who have few options, like shopping resources, kind of like how Walmart kind of became the only place you could shop depending on where you lived in the country. There just weren't a lot of options. It is kind of the Walmart of the internet, and it's a universal, so it is available there.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of the idea that I had to just finally, again, like I said, kind of make the final word on all of that stuff that came before. And it freed me up. I noticed that as soon as I finished it and I put it out there, I started writing new stories. And I hadn't written any new stories in a while. And so I've been experimenting with like Substack and Patreon and things like that as places to put short form work. So,
Nice.
and that experiment continues, but yeah, it inspired me to start writing more short fiction. And it happens every once in a while here and there. It's nothing that I have any hard and fast goals or anything like that. It's just, at my leisure. Because I've been, because like I said, last year I spent writing the novel. And then this year I've started writing another novel. So I'm in the midst of writing another novel. So writing short fiction is a nice little break. If I get myself a little burned out on the novel, or if I get myself backed into a corner, or I just need something to, like a little different taste on the palate, I'll write a short story. Because little ideas percolate, and it's like, well, it won't go in this novel, so I'll do that. So whether it's plumbing stuff from my childhood or just a silly little idea, it's always like that. Where do you get your ideas? It's like, well, yeah, you just get your ideas from everything, from everywhere.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
dreams, your past, something somebody says to you, it comes from everywhere. So,
Right on. It was very interesting to me. I just want to double check because it's been a minute. Right. No table of contents, no
mm,
page numbers.
no.
So you always hear a little metaphor here. You always hear musicians talking about how they order the songs on an album
Mm-hmm.
that's a non-concept album. So I guess I had two questions. I think you answered one. One, I when I did the review, and guys, go to New Mystics Reviews. You can read the review for more Argonauts and
Yeah,
Goodreads
that
as well.
review is
And
better than the book.
stop.
It's a good review. I really
There are
appreciate it.
certain what have I done? I get because I've done music reviews and other kinds of stuff, but I've done 337 now, I think, book reviews. And I will tell you, Nick, it's the truth. The better the book, the easier the book review. And I can adopt a voice that sometimes sort of mimics the work that I've read, which I'm
Mm-hmm.
sort of an echo anyway, being an actor and some of the quirky workings of my mind. I kind of do that thing. So no, I thoroughly enjoyed it, but the pressure, I'm like, oh, these have to be perfect before I send them to him. But so I did say like Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, because by not
Yeah.
having a table of contents and not having page numbers, you could make this a living document, but it sounds like this is fixed and you've moved on.
Right. But then when I read that, I thought, well, what about that? And then so
Awesome.
you may have planted a seed where there may be new editions of this until the day I drop dead. Who knows?
Yeah.
And then I'll
Before I
slip
got
new
my,
stories in. I won't
yeah,
publish another book of short stories. I'll just keep adding stories and rearrange everything, start rewriting parts of stories. Because I do find that fascinating that he did that, that he spent his entire career building a body of work. What I call it building a body, building his body of work in public. He's doing it
yeah,
right in front of everybody, and he's showing everybody his drafts. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
and I think that's fascinating. And we do a lot of that because of the internet. And like I said, because of Substack, we used to do that on LiveJournal back in the ancient days.
yeah,
Patreon, it's so easy to put. We even put little first drafts of little nuggets and ideas out, on social media. Like, oh,
yeah,
that's a clever thing. I'll pop that on there so I have my day's engagement. So we're always showing our work. We're showing our work more these days in public than I think a lot of us ever did, or we even thought we could. And that's just an old. That was just an older version of doing that. So
yeah.
it's I like it. I like to see how the sausage is made. I'm always a behind the scenes guy. You learn so much about the people who make the thing, which I think, my philosophy is that like novels and short stories are conversations between the author and the audience.
Amen.
Um, and I'm also kind of a death of the author man, where you can take the thing and you can glean from it what you will, and it becomes yours once you have it. Um, but the author is also part of that audience, and they have a say. They also have a say and a valid opinion about that piece of work,
Yeah,
even though they're the one who made it. They have a valid opinion about it too, and you get to see. It's like getting to peer into their mind. And how often do you get to peer into a person's mind? As a creative person, that it is both. A lot of people go like, man, you have to be really arrogant to be a writer and to think people like your stuff enough to that will you put it out there and will do it. It's open heart surgery. You are putting your heart and soul out there for criticism, and especially in the age of the internet when you can hide behind, a username, uh, it's even more savage and less, less thought out, less, filled with bots and things like that. So you really are subjecting yourself to a scrutiny that most people would never allow. Even the most gregarious person would never, acquiesce to having things about their psyche and their emotional, beliefs and thoughts be subject. And here we're going, hey, look, here's me. This is a piece of me. What do you think? And then people can either reject it or spend time parsing it, hating it, loving it, yada yada. So
Yeah. Oh man, guys, this is boilerplate for what I want these conversations to be. You are a hero of mine. You know that.
no, you too, buddy. I mean it, man. Really.
I'm doing my and the hour's going so fast. I got to be careful.
I
There's
know.
a couple other things I want to show them, but we're getting there. And there's a few things on your list here that I also want to talk about that you've touched on. My blogger, where every day I'm putting up stuff, and now I'm just doing lists like from my library, which I thought of that. I
Great.
should have called it from my library, but like my top favorite, my must read this. But some of the essays, I go back in, I have a thought. I can just go back in, find that essay. It's easy enough to update. So
Mm-hmm.
it is like this living document. So somebody who's read one of those essays, it may be different, maybe longer, maybe shorter. I'll reconsider a phrase. But anyway, let's move on. So where your writing and your art come together are in these three that I love so much. Feral Boy and Gilgamesh at the End of the World.
Right.
I'm gonna show the audience cool illustrations, and you
Yeah,
tell
feel
them
free.
what was the inspiration and how it developed.
Yeah. So I've always been interested in comics. Like I said, even since I was a kid, I always loved the, putting together of, images and words together. Um, as kids, most of us like comics, especially a lot of us creative kids. We loved comics to varying degrees. And I always kind of had this like I said, I had fallen in love with comic strips, and so Feral Boy and Gilgamesh started out as a little comic strip that I did on a WordPress blog. I think it was more of just kind of an exercise to do some work. I hadn't done a lot of work in a while, and I wanted to do something. And I think what was it? Burke Breath had the hardcover collections of all of his Bloom County strips were starting to come out from IDW, and I was collecting them. And I was just like, I loved these strips. I remember reading these growing up. I remember not really understanding them, but the characters were so well created and the art was so free. I thought, I want to do something that feels like that. And so I'd created these characters and set them into, like a post-apocalypse kind of world. And I just decided that I was going to do kind of my own Bloom County inspired type comic strip. Well, um, I'd gotten a wild hair that maybe I would try to do one for Heavy Metal magazine. So I reimagined it, did one story in comic book format instead. That's why they're formatted magazine style, because I had originally drawn them for magazines. And then there was this young guy from California who really liked them, and he loves comics. He lives and breathes comics. Tom Bevis. He um, wanted to know if he could write some stories, and I was like, okay, try one. We'll do it. We'll try it out. He sent me an outline for 12 stories, this kind of epic storyline, and I'm like, okay, well, you got some really great ideas. So we did collaborate. So he and I did co-write these stories, and I illustrated them. I love comics. And the most fun I think I ever had at a convention was going with my daughter. My daughter and I went her senior year of high school, and we were, had a table and we sold these, and we had a blast. It was really a lot of fun, and it was kind of a going away because she was heading off to university. But it was, one of, the best memories I have of her as a teenager was us spending that day, schlepping books at the comic book convention. As a matter of fact, I didn't have as much fun with it after when I did it by myself after that.
Right
The
on.
biggest problem with comics is you have to have it in your blood. Like, and I know people who do. They live it and breathe it. It's the only thing they want and care about. I just didn't have that fire in my belly. It was a vehicle for me to tell stories. It was a vehicle to express things that I wanted to that, didn't work in other ways. And I don't have access. I can't animate. It's too expensive and time consuming. I used to do animation when I was really young, stop motion, but it's like
Wow.
so this is kind of what I would consider what storyboards if I could have done an animated shorts or something like that. Um, but I just don't have the fire in the belly because the work to return ratio on comics is savage.
Yeah.
You spend days, months slogging over a drawing board, and it takes what, 15, 20 minutes to read a comic book. And
Yeah.
then it goes in the stack. And it's brutal. That's why you have to have it in your blood. And I just didn't. I loved them, but I didn't eat, drink, and breathe them. And that's what separates people who can go the long haul. And I like working in different mediums and things like that. I never thought it was permanent. Like, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life.
Man.
I was going to tell this story, and then I was going to do something else. Because I love different mediums, and I love, a dream is like I would love to work in film or television. Get a crack at that. I've never done it. And it would be, and of course, a lot of us just have that dream. We would love to work in film or television, not the, not maybe some of the, realities of it, but the fantasy of it, the creative of it. And I've met some people in film and television, and they're really cool people. Again, they're just creatives. They're hardworking creatives. Like all the authors I've met, like all the artists, like illustrators I've met, just hardworking, pretty down to earth, smart, funny, um, weirdos, and I mean that in the most, flattering, way I can. It's a tribe. It's a global tribe, and you recognize, one of your own when you see them. I met one
Right.
in London. I was in London 10 days. My last day going back to Heathrow Airport, I met a guy who was working on the sequel to Game of Thrones. What was
Oh,
that show?
yeah.
He, he was a camera operator, and he also was a cab driver, a black cab driver. He was working on, the show about the Targaryens. Yeah, and it was cool. We just had this really great, because if anybody who's tried to go from central London to Heathrow, that's about 2.5 hours by car. So
Yeah.
you get so we had a nice long conversation about them, because I think they must have filmed a lot of that there in England,
Yeah.
so in the UK at least.
Yeah.
So it was really cool, and he is just a guy. He's a guy, and when he's not shooting, he's got to have a day job. It's kind of like a school teacher. When school's out, a lot of teachers get a second side gig or something. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, and yeah, I don't know. It was just something, again, it's something that would go on the bucket list to do. But yeah, but right now I'm just working on my novel, and waiting for opportunities to pop up. Again, you never know what's going to happen. You never know what kind of things will come across the transom, and I'm in a point in my life where I am, I'm kind of just open. I'm open to, to wherever the muse takes me.
Cool. Cool. Well, I'm like right on the I'm right on the edge of a couple of really big things, and you would get a call from me if any of those things, because I would
You've
love
got my
to.
number.
Right, yeah, I do. Work on something. Am I? Where can people get the comic?
Um, so it's kind of hard to get a hold of these days. As far as I know, the only copies that exist are in a box in my basement,
Well, I
and
have them.
I am too lazy to put them in envelopes and send them to people. So I don't think that they're available. They're technically not available anymore. I think
Okay.
if I there was a website that sold them, but I just don't remember the name of the website. Every once in a while, I get an email from somebody, where can I get them comics? And I'm like, dude, I don't have them. I can't get them out.
Oh, okay.
So I
So
just
so
have to get
even
the
if my
energy.
audience contacts you,
Well, and I was just gonna say, so I have a WordPress. It's NF Pendleton. It's like wordpress.nfpendleton.com, I think is the web address. That is kind of the hub, and again, it's a work in progress. It's the hub that I built that has links to like everything that I do, plus a contact page. And if people want to get a hold of me, they can just go there and they just click on contact and they can fill out the contact form, and it'll go to my email and I'll look at it. If I would if somebody wanted all three of them, I'd just bundle them, and for a little bit of money on PayPal, I would just ship them to them until
cool.
that box runs out. So I know I have more of some than others. So I think the issue one I have the most of for some reason, and
Oh, interesting.
I think I bought fewer of two and three, and we sold tons at the shows, like way more than I would have thought. And so it's just what I have left over, and it's literally in a box in my basement. They're all no water damage. They're all in great shape. The ones that I sent you are from that box, so they
They're
don't.
perfect. They're
Yeah, and they're in
absolutely
great
perfect.
shape. So
Guys, they don't smell
they don't
nothing.
even have a basement smell.
And
Yeah, no.
I'm holding on to mine.
Yeah,
Um,
it was a lot of fun. It was a time and a place, and it was it was really it was a lot of fun. It was fun working with Tom. I hope Tom had fun writing those stories. He's he loves comics, and I know he still does comic stuff. And I hope he had fun working on it while he did. So,
they have great energy. So we have just enough time now. We're gonna do this. And
okay.
I did not know until yesterday that
Yeah.
this exists. I don't know if you know, but I have Saturday morning story time live. I would love to read this book for my audience.
Yeah, I'll real quick. I wrote this for my daughter. My daughter's name is Galaxy. I wrote this for when she was 5. She's gonna be, oh gosh, I can't remember. Is she turned 25 this year? She either turns 25 or 26 this year. Nope,
Same
she'll be
age as my
25.
daughter.
Yeah, she'll be
Awesome.
25 in October. So, I when she turned 21 or 22, I dug up the one single copy that I made for her for Christmas of this. And she loved Dr. Seuss. I wrote kind of a silly Dr. Seussian kind of rhyme, and I illustrated it with her as the main character. Well, I
Cool.
dug this up and I'm like, I can tweak the narrative, I can tweak the text a little bit, and I can completely redraw this and redo it. And it just became a project. It was something to do. I think it's what I did before I did the short story collection. And I'm like, okay, yeah. So that's what I did. I just did it as a project. I redrew the whole thing. I recolored it, rewrote it, and it's available as a hardcover on Amazon.
Cool.
It's a children's book for, like, I say, 3 to 5 year olds. My son, my granddaughter, she's gonna turn 3 this year. My son says he reads it to her all the time. She loves it. I don't.
Ah,
She obviously doesn't make the connection that it's her aunt, who's the main character. But 'cause since she's so young, but apparently she really likes it, and everybody who's seen it has gotten a real kick out of it. And it was just a lot of fun to do.
well,
So
I
yeah, and
am
it's
ordering
definitely
a copy.
appropriate for small children. So
Cool.
the only thing that I've done that's appropriate for small children.
I hear that. The only thing that I do that's appropriate for small children anymore, although I used to perform for young audiences, is my Saturday morning story time.
Mhm.
So I think I've done 103 books now, but I'm gonna order this and then I'll let you know when I read it. So Galaxy is a very unique name. I immediately think of a Ford Galaxy 500, but I'm
Yeah.
probably way off or no.
Actually, it's named after the. I named her. I like the name because there was a band called Galaxy 500 in
Oh, cool.
in the 80s and 90s, and I'm sure that's exactly where they got their name. Also, one of my friends in high school drove a Galaxy 500, and we had a lot of wild adventures in that car. Um, and it was down to two different names, and I let Galaxy's mom pick which one of the two names. We narrowed it down to two names, and then when she was born, I told Jess, I said, you gave birth to her, so you make the final decision. And she surprised me by picking that one because it was the less conventional of the two, and bless her for it. So she's but she's a great kid. So she's an archaeologist, and she I just she's a dream. Like, I literally had a dream about her in my 20s. And I would always tell everybody, I'm going to have a daughter. I don't know who I'm going to marry. I don't know anything about her, but I know I'm going to have a daughter. And yeah, so, and she's kind of like, she's like my little dream child, and she's a great adult woman, and I love her dearly. And I kind of did it, like I said, is a lot of these things are love letters. The novel was kind of a love letter to my mom, who's the one who inspired the Greek mythology stuff in me. And this was, something for my daughter. Always have an inspiration
Oh
for
yeah.
for what I'm doing, and
Yeah.
always have at least an audience of one in mind for anything that you're doing, and that really does help you to shape it into something, to keep it from just being something boilerplate or boring or staid. Always kind of have one particular quirky person in mind and try to just do it for them. That's kind of my philosophy.
I have to
And that
order.
person could be yourself too. You
Well,
should always write for yourself, of course.
I find that I'm my toughest audience. So I'm like, okay, if I think this is pretty good, probably an audience will too. And that served me pretty well. So Galaxy Pendleton archaeologist,
Yeah,
that begs to be made into a film
I
or a
know,
TV
right?
series. That is amazing. Yeah,
Should,
folks, I think the notifications have gone. Sorry, I'm talking to somebody in the chat room.
yeah.
I think notifications have gone the way of the West, and I think Facebook is sort of phasing out live video completely. They're deleting them like mad. But sorry, my friend. Go ahead. Go ahead, Nick.
Oh, yeah, no. Um,
I
I
blew
don't
your
believe this.
train of thought. I
No, no, that's
apologize.
okay.
I try to interact with the audience a little.
No, that's
Unless
fine.
I'm
Yeah.
remembering wrong, is there a familial connection to Feral Boy and Gilgamesh?
Um,
Or am I misremembering? I guess I'm misremembering.
I can't remember what.
I thought it was about your son and you guys actually had a dog like Gilgamesh. No?
Oh, well, Gilgamesh is actually based on my dog Gilgamesh.
Oh, okay, right on. Well,
I came up with the ideas for the stories initially when it was a comic strip, just on walks with Gil. Um, and after he passed away, and I got my dog Leo, in the later stories, at the end of, notice that he starts to kind of look a little different. He starts to look more like Leo in the later stories because
oh,
I've got a live model with me all the time that that I could draw from. And so yeah, I know he was definitely, I would say, yeah, that's a good point. I bet you that a lot of that boyish rambunctiousness really does, you know, really it was a good insight about my son. He was very much a little feral boy type guy, and Gil was my dog, and I put him in the story. So yeah, it's funny how still come like, oh yeah, these things really do connect. Like I said, I
yeah.
just realized something yesterday. You point out something tonight, and I'm like, yeah, it really is. It's all autobiography, isn't it?
Yeah,
Through a warped funhouse mirror.
it totally is, and that's the fun of it. I'm gonna have to have you back. This
Yeah,
was
I'd love to
just
do it again.
I loved it. Yeah, we will in the fall or the winter. We'll do that. Luckily, a lot of people want to do this, so
Yeah,
I'm
great.
really happy. I feel kind of selfish. I wish I was selfless. I feel a little selfish because I just get to chat with
I
creatives that I totally admire, like in front of like a private conversation in public is what I call these.
exactly. I'm
So
looking forward to the other episodes too. So
thank you. Yeah, we got some great people on. Karen's in our audience. Karen will be on the show in 2 weeks. Thank you for setting me up. Karen will be on the show for 2 weeks. She's a filmmaker. She
Cool.
has she's got a short film that's going to festivals. It just got into the Sci-Fi of London Film Festival. Karen's got a documentary she's working on. She's also an actress. Yeah, we're gonna have really, really cool people on. Now, next week, guys, it's my creative communications. So I'm solo next week, and I'm gonna talk about the art of showing up. A couple weeks ago, Nick, I did networking. So add another chihuahua to my collection and name her Casio. Oh, very good. Sorry, the audience is pulling by.
Ocasio Cortez.
So
Yeah, I know.
yeah,
I was looking through them too. House of Dragons. That's right.
right, yeah.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah. Oh, so you can see the comments. That's great without me putting them
Yeah.
up on the screen. I didn't know that. That might be a new thing. So we're gonna say goodbye.
Thank you very
Um,
much for having me, Joe.
yeah, we are. We're seriously gonna do this again because there are other. I'm gonna hold on to this. I'm gonna stick it in. I'm gonna stick it in one of your books. Because there were things we didn't get to that I want to.
Cool.
Wow, you were a model guest. You're gonna be a hard act to follow. So,
Nah,
all right, guys, let me
I'm
give you
looking
the
forward to it.
out. Let me give you the outro, and we'll talk soon. I'll see you next week for the art of showing up, not just for creatives. We all need to show up. So I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Here we go.